Chanukah Sameach, everyone. Welcome. Hanukkah has just been absolutely magnificent here. Really, we have come together despite the global crisis that has been going on to truly bring the light of Hanukkah into our homes as individual homes and also into the Adat community. Of course, it started with the menorah building and decorating headed by our youth committee with Dave Argo and Maura Elsa, and lighting candles the first night together over Zoom, showcasing our amazing talents in our community, the Shabbat at Adat family experience, the special Chanukah Malava Malka and raffle, Baking with Brooke featuring Felicia G., also known as my motivation for joining Weight Watchers today. Last night's fantastic Hanukkah share from Rabbi Jeff, which, by the way, for anyone who missed it, or for those that want to review it, it's available on YouTube. And so it has been absolutely magnificent. And on this sixth night of Hanukkah, on Rosh Chodesh Tevet, it's my absolute privilege to welcome all of you to tonight's event, our keynote address this Hanukkah, given by Rabbi Dr. Jacob J. Schacter, Shlita. Before we turn the screen over to Rabbi Schacter, I just would like to take the opportunity to thank the pillars of our adult education program for funding this program and our adult education program, our robust adult education program at Adat, Mike and Karen Aaron, Brian and Sarah Keating, and Yaakov and Devorah Shower. Thank you for all you do to increase Torah learning in La Jolla. And a special thank you to Gavin and Cheryl Horn for being one of the sponsors for tonight's program in honor of your 20th wedding anniversary. Mazel tov. You should have mazel and bracha with many more happy and healthy years together. So for those that don't know or are not familiar with Rabbi J.J. Schacter and who he is, all you really need to do is read his bio, and I would encourage everyone to do just that, to realize that the opportunity our community has this evening to learn Torah with Rabbi Schacter and gain insights from him during this unprecedented time we're living in during Hanukkah is extraordinary. Rabbi Schacter is a unique hybrid of being a Talmud Chacham with smicha from Torah V'das. He holds a PhD from Harvard, has been a pulpit rabbi of a major modern Orthodox congregation in Manhattan, the Jewish Center, and is a teacher at Yeshiva University in Jewish history and thought, and a pillar in the work that YU does in training rabbinic leaders. I myself have been a beneficiary of his tutelage. On a personal note, Brooke and I have a tremendous amount of Hakaras Hatov for Rabbi Schacter. Rabbi Schacter was my senior thesis advisor while I was completing my bachelor's degree from Yeshiva University in history. I had the great honor of learning from Rabbi Schacter while studying for my rabbinic ordination in YU. He officiated at Brooke's sister's wedding, Eliza and Sam Koenig, and currently I'm a member of Rabbi Schacter's Yarchei Kala Fellowship as he continues to guide and educate me and my colleagues. Rabbi J.J. Schacter is one of the leading voices, just to put it simply, of our generation on being a Torah Jew in the modern world.
Thank you.
He truly is one of the voices. So I'm going to turn over the screen to Rabbi Schacter now, and without further ado, we look forward to learning Torah from Rabbi Schacter. It's my great kavod to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Rabbi Reich. Thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to see some of you and to see many black boxes that I hope have people behind it, even though we don't have the privilege of beholding your exceptional and beautiful visages at this moment. Perhaps you might be motivated to join us just so that you should see one another. You know, I think what's so special in a community that's been locked down more or less is to use all the opportunities that we have to connect with one another. So I'm sure that each one of you would like to see each other one of you. So do everybody a chesed and let's see who you are. It's a real great honor for me to have this opportunity to spend some time with you. Your rabbi speaks very highly about you, speaks highly about the community, speaks highly about the leadership of the shul, speaks highly about the interest on the part of so many of you to study, to learn, to grow, to deepen your appreciation of what it means to be a human being, what it means to be a Jew. And it's great to be in the presence of such people and to have a chance to share a little bit about Hanukkah. I want to thank the Rabbi for your very gracious introduction. It's very sweet of you and kind of you, and thank you. I want to make sure that you all have access to the handout that I sent along to the Rabbi and to the office. So I'm not sure exactly what that is, Rabbi. What, everybody has it, or it's?
Everyone should have received it by email.
You want to put it in the chat, maybe put a link in the chat?
Yeah, I'm going to do that now.
Okay, because what I'd like to do is to study together with you rather than just speaking to you. So this is an opportunity for us to learn together and to share some thoughts central to the holiday which we find ourselves in. I spoke to Rabbi Reich earlier today, and he informed me that some of you were interested in engaging me in conversation about various issues that are on your mind that separate necessarily from the topic of tonight's talk. I told him I'm happy to do that. So what I think I'm going to do, and I discussed it with Rabbi Reich, was to go through the first part of my presentation and then to stop and to take questions. Feel free to ask anything that you'd like. I will try to answer as best as I can. And then if we have time, we'll finish. If not, you'll just have to invite me back to come another time to be able to continue the conversation. So today is the holiday of Hanukkah. I hope you all have access to the sheets. Today's the holiday of Hanukkah. And the holiday of Hanukkah has many different interesting aspects to it that I'm sure that Rabbi Reich has a chance already to share with you, and that I'm sure you've shared with one another. I want to pick up on what I consider to be, and what may objectively be, the all-time high, most famous question that's posed within the context of this holiday. So you know that every holiday has a lot of interesting material associated with it, as does Hanukkah. And every holiday has one iconic question that is associated with that holiday. So I want to pick up on what I consider to be the iconic question of Hanukkah. It's a question that I'm imagining that some of you, most of you, many of you have already grappled with over the course of the years, and maybe even this holiday itself. And I'd like to suggest some thoughts in connection with this question. So we begin with a Talmudic passage on page 1. This comes from Tractate Shabbat 21b. Now, I'm going to go slowly. I'm not going to assume a great deal of Jewish knowledge necessarily. If I'm going too slow, you'll wave your hand. If I'm going too fast, you'll wave your hand. I want everybody to be on the same page, and everybody should be comfortable. So since this is my first time speaking with you, I would feel better if I could actually see you and interact with you, so that I could have a sense of the audience, but we'll do the best that we can. We're going to start with a Talmudic passage of Masechet Shabbat 21b. Now, there is no separate tractate for Hanukkah like there is for Purim. The holiday of Purim has an entire tractate in the Talmud that relates to it. It's called Masechet Megillah, named for one of the major themes of Hanukkah, of Purim. Hanukkah has no tractate. The laws of Hanukkah are folded into the second chapter in the tractate of Shabbat, known as Bameh Madlikin. It's a chapter from the Mishnah that is recited traditionally on Friday evenings, and it describes which oils are and are not allowed to be used for the holiday of Hanukkah. And in the context of for the Shabbat, and in the context of talking about which oils are used or not used for Shabbat, the Talmud takes a little bit of a detour and talks about Hanukkah. And so we begin with a discussion, my Hanukkah. We're pretty much all the way down at the bottom, 3 lines from the bottom before they get wide. And if you are more comfortable, please turn to page 2. And the top left of page 2 is a translation of this passage from the Talmud that I'm going to read. So you follow in whatever way you feel comfortable. I'm going to read and I'm going to translate. The Talmud asks a very interesting question, and that is, what's Hanukkah all about? Why are we celebrating the holiday of Hanukkah? My Hanukkah, what's Hanukkah? It's about as elementary and simple and straightforward and obvious a question as we can have. And then the Talmud answers the first wide line, right at the beginning of the first wide line. When the Greeks who had destroyed the temple and made it impossible for the Jewish people to light the menorah and to observe temple ritual for a number of years, when they came in and desecrated the temple, tim'u kol hashmanim shebehechal, they made ritually impure all of the oil in the temple area. In other words, there was no pure oil. You understand very well that to light the menorah, we need to have pure oil. It has to be ritually pure. Well, they made sure, the Greeks, to desecrate the temple and to ensure that all the oils would be impure and therefore not valid to be able to be used for the menorah. Ukeshegavra Malchus, next line, Beis Chashmonai, when the Chashmonaim came and had success and were strong and were able to overcome and were once again able to recapture the temple and make it possible for the Jews once again to resume their sacrifices and their ritual in the temple. Botku v'lo motzu elo pach echad shel shemen shahayamunach b'chosama shel kohen gadol. They only found one cruse of oil that had the imprimatur of the high priest, which means that it was pure. They found one little tiny cruse of oil that was pure, and there was only enough for it to last for one night. Lo and behold, nasa bones, a miracle happened, v'edliku mimenu shmona yamim, and it lasted for 8 nights. So this is a story that I'm sure you're familiar with. And here's the source. This is the primary source for this fact, for this explanation, for this rationale for the holiday of Hanukkah. There was enough that they found to last for one night, and lo and behold, it lasted for 8 nights. And therefore, we observe Hanukkah. As the Talmud continues shortly thereafter, they instituted that Hanukkah should be observed as a holiday. Pretty obvious, pretty straightforward, pretty well known, pretty uncomplicated, but it actually is complicated. And the question that I want to ask is posed on the top right of page 2 by Rabbi Joseph Karo. Rabbi Yosef Karo is the author of the Shulchan Aruch, which is the traditional code of Jewish law. And before he wrote the traditional code of Jewish law, the Shulchan Aruch, he wrote a commentary on a previous code known as the Arba'a Turim, the 4 columns, that was written in the 14th century. Rabbi Karo was born in Spain in 1489. And you know what happened in 1492 in Spain. The Jews were expelled from Spain. So his parents said to him, Yosef, we're leaving. We're out of here. We can't stay anymore. And they wandered through the Ottoman Empire. And Rabbi Karo developed a reputation in the Ottoman Empire as he grew older as a formidable rabbinic scholar, and spent the last years of his life in Tzfat, in Safed in Israel, where he is buried. I'm assuming that some of you, many of you, most of you have been to Israel, went to visit Tzfat, the city of Tzfat in the Galil, went to the old cemetery in Tzfat. You'll find very clearly marked the grave of Rabbi Joseph Karo. So before he wrote his Shulchan Aruch, he wrote a commentary on the 14th century code, and he also wrote a commentary on Maimonides' code of the 12th century. So we're now picking him up here in the Beit Yosef commentary on the Tur, on the Arba'at Turim, where he asks what I think is an incredibly significant and powerful question. I'm going to paraphrase and I'm going to summarize rather than reading it inside. If you do want to follow, it's on the top right. There's a lot of Hebrew here. It's almost halfway down at the end of the line, Ve'ikar lemedak, where it is underlined. So that's where I'm beginning. One may ask the following question. Why was Hanukkah established for 8 nights? It's a very simple, straightforward question. Why was Hanukkah established for 8 nights? So you'll answer, because the miracle of Hanukkah was for 8 nights. But that's not true. The miracle of Hanukkah was not for 8 nights. Why was the miracle of Hanukkah not for 8 nights? Anybody want to share, think logically? Why was the miracle of Hanukkah not 8 nights?
Because there was enough for one day.
Because
so it was really
who's
7
speaking?
nights.
Francis.
Yes.
Thank you, Francis. Thank you. Because there was enough already to last for 1 night. What's the miracle, Francis? How many nights was the miracle?
7.
7 nights. So therefore asks Rabbi Caro, Hanukkah we should celebrate for 7 nights. I think it's a really powerful question. If it's all about the miracle, the first night isn't a miracle. The remaining 7 nights is a miracle. So let's celebrate Hanukkah to commemorate the miracle of the oil for 7 nights. That's the question. So many years ago, I was in Mea She'arim in Jerusalem, and I came across a sefer called Ner Lamea, which has 100 answers to this question. Ner Lamea, 100 candles, 100 answers to the candle question. A couple of years later, came across a book, a sefer that has 300 answers to this question. And last week, I have a student at Yeshiva University where I teach who told me that he has a book that has 500 answers to this question. So since we're probably going to run out of time after answer number whatever, I'm not going to impose upon you to listen to 500 answers, but I do want to share a few with you, some that Rabbi Caro himself gives, and 1 or 2 that I find to be most incredibly meaningful, personally meaningful, and communally meaningful. Rabbi Caro says, I'll tell you that in fact the miracle was on the first night also. You see, because they knew when they reconsecrated the temple and they found 1 cruse of oil, they knew that it would take them 8 days to get an uninterrupted supply, because the oil was created for them in a little town outside of Jerusalem called Moza. Now, any one of you who has been to Jerusalem has passed Moza. When you leave the airport and you get into the sherut or the taxi or the bus or the whatever, and you travel to Yerushalayim, so first it is flat, and then when you get to Beit Shemesh, it starts to go up. You start to go up into the hills surrounding Jerusalem. About 10 minutes, 12 minutes out of Jerusalem, before you see the big hills of Jerusalem looking at you, and before you see Ramot on the left-hand side, and Har Nof, the big buildings of Har Nof are in front of you, you pass a town called Moza, and there's a sign. It's right there on the main road, Kvish Echad, highway number 1, Moza. In fact, there are 2 Mozas. There is Upper Moza and Lower Moza. The whole Moza is about as big as this Zoom screen, but there are 2 of them. There's an upper one and a lower one. It is in Moza where there were olive trees. In fact, if you drive by in the daytime, next time, please God, we should all get there and get there as soon as we can. You'll pass by, you'll see olive trees on both sides of the road. That was the place, the go-to place where the oil was provided for the temple. Today, it takes 12 minutes to get from Moza to Jerusalem. In ancient times, it took 4 days. So they knew that it would take 4 days to get to Moza, a half an hour, 2 hours to squeeze some of the oil, and then 4 days to get back, which means that they had 8 days. And so they knew that they would not have a supply uninterrupted for 8 days. Says Rabbi Caro, answer number 1. As a result, what they did was they said they wanted to stretch out this one little cruise to last for 1 night as long as possible. So instead of pouring all of it into the menorah, they only poured 1/8 in. And they figured they'll pour 1/8 in the first night and 1/8 the second night, at least something. It's not going to burn a whole night, but at least something. Lo and behold, it burnt a whole night. Even after the first night, they only put in 1/8, lasted a whole night. So there was a miracle even on the first night. And so therefore we have 8 days of a miracle for Hanukkah. Second answer, he says, is that when they poured out the entire cruse into the menorah for one night and they picked up the cruse, lo and behold, it was still full. You know, normally you take a glass, you empty the glass is empty. They took the cruse, they poured it out, they held it in their hands, and it was full like it was before, like nothing happened. That's a pretty substantial miracle right away on the first night. The third answer he gives is that they poured everything into the menorah, they lit it, they came back the next morning, and none of the oil in the menorah went down. It lit a whole night, but it was still full the way it was when they first poured it in. Ergo, a miracle the first night. And so Rabbi Yosef Karo says, I'll give you 3 explanations as to why, in fact, even though they did find a cruse of oil to last one night, that even already the first night, there was a miracle. Either 1/8 lasted a whole night, either when they poured out of the cruse, it still remained full, either when they poured it all into the menorah in the temple, lit it, came back the next day, and the cups in the menorah were still full. So we've got 3 down, we've got 497 to go. I want to share one with you that I consider to be the most meaningful. You know that sometimes somebody asks a question or you ask a question and it's a good question, and then somebody gives an answer and hopefully it's a good answer. Hopefully the answer answers the question. But sometimes the answer is so powerful that it's not even a question to begin with. The answer is such a compelling answer that the whole question turns out to be actually not a powerful question at all. And this is the way I see this exchange. What's the assumption of the question? The assumption of the question is, wait a minute, there was enough oil to last one night. I mean, that's not a miracle. The miracle is that from one night became 8 nights. But the fact that it lasted for one night, that's not a miracle. But I take issue with the premise of the question because I want to suggest to you, and I think I always thought that this was relevant, but to me this year, given what we're facing, it's even more relevant. I want to submit to you that the question is not a question because the whole premise is off. Are you trying to tell me that if I light oil and the oil lights, that's not a miracle? If you put a wick in water, would it light? If you put a wick in vinegar, would it light? It's not going to light. The fact that oil lights, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. The fact that the sun rises in the morning, it's a miracle. That it sets at night, it's a miracle. HaMechadesh b'tuvo b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reishis. Part of the morning service is we talk to God and we say, you, every day, God, you recreate creation. Every day it's recreation. It's a miracle. The fact that I'm talking to you like this, it's a miracle. The fact that we got up in the morning and we got out of bed and we put our feet on the floor and then we stood up and we put one foot in front of another. And then we're able to get dressed and we're able to speak and we're able to see and we're able to hear and we're able to eat is a miracle. It's a miracle. And you know why it's a miracle? Because you realize that it's a miracle when you can't do it anymore. When you can't get out of bed, when you can't move, when you can't see, when you can't dress yourself. You say to yourself, oh my God, all these years I took it for granted. It's a miracle. What do we say 3 times a day in Modim? in Modim towards the end of the Amidah, the Shmona Esrei. Va'al nisecha shebechol yom imanu. God, you do miracles with us every day. Wait a minute, what miracle did God do for me today? Today is December 15th, 2020. It's in the middle of Hanukkah. What did he do? What, was there a revelation today? Did God take me out of Egypt today? Did God give me the Torah today? Did God split the sea today? Did God send man from heaven today? Did God have an awning, a cloud that he protected me today? What miracle did he do? What kind of miracle was it? Va'al nisecha, plural. The miracles that you did for me today, I'm not a liar. Because every day God does miracles. Because if we can function like human beings and we're healthy, that's a miracle. What is nature? Nature is a miracle that happens all the time. It's a bracha, it's a miracle, it's a nes. The fact that oil lights is a miracle. And we have one night of Hanukkah to teach us that we should never take anything for granted. Never, ever take anything for granted. The fact that we have blessings, the fact that we can move and talk and engage with one another, the fact that we can connect to one another, the fact that we have a community, the fact that we have a shul, the fact that we have an incredible rabbi, the fact that we have lay leadership, the fact that we have families, that's a miracle. And we appreciate it most when we don't have it anymore. If you don't have it, all of a sudden it becomes a miracle. So don't wait until we don't have it. Never, ever take anything for granted. If you would have asked me last year that I would have to have a Seder, just me and my wife, I would have thought you're a lunatic. I would have thought you're certifiable. My whole life, I had a Seder with my family. I had a Seder with my parents, with my kids, my grandkids. If you would have told me that on Rosh Hashanah, I couldn't go to shul, I would have thought you're crazy. If you would have told me that I have to daven outside, and you'll forgive me, on the East Coast, it's freezing, I would think you're crazy. Why do I have to daven outside? Tell me I can't go into shul? If you were to tell me that for the last 9 months I couldn't hug my grandchildren, if you were to tell me that for the last 9 months I couldn't see my parents, what are you talking about? And you know what? We take it for granted. And you know what? We should never take anything for granted, because we appreciate it when we can't have it anymore. When we can't have it, we say, oh my God, hugging my grandchildren, hugging my children, it's a miracle. It's not automatic. You know what? Nothing is automatic. And so this to me is very profound on the holiday of Hanukkah. 7 nights, you're right, 7 nights, the miracle that the oil lasted, even though it was only enough to last for 1 night. 1 night miracle of Hanukkah, maybe the first night, maybe the last night, you choose whatever night you want. 1 night is to remind us of the blessings that we have, to be grateful for the blessings that we have, to appreciate the blessings that we have, never, ever to take anything for granted. Baruch Hashem, we should be healthy, we should continue to be healthy. Do you know that more Americans died from corona than combat deaths in all of World War II? Do you know that? Do you know that? There were 272 something thousand American soldiers killed in combat in World War II. There are more Americans who have died now, and we're not done yet, regretfully, we're pushing 300,000, than were killed in World War II in combat. And we're sitting here, and we're home, and we're healthy, and we're not stuck in a hospital, and we're not on a respirator. That's not automatic. We lost loved ones. Our mechutin, we lost a mechutin. Our son-in-law's father died from COVID early on in April. Healthy guy, young guy, no preconditions. He just got caught up, no explanation, and he died very early on. We have a sister-in-law who's very sick, who's been in the hospital since Simchas Torah, and she contracted COVID. And we're walking around. Do you know that every single day when I wake up, I said this more or less my whole life, but never have I really concentrated when I wake up in the morning and I say, Moda ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam, the early first prayer we say, thank you, God, shehachazarta bi nishmasi b'chemla, with mercy, with kindness, you gave me back my soul. You know, when I was younger, I figured I'm going to live forever. When you get older, people around you, colleagues, friends, begin to pass away. That's what happens. You don't live forever. You thank God every day that you get up, and even when you're younger. There are young people also, you know very well, who are victims of COVID. Never, ever take anything for granted. So I'm inviting you, I'm more than inviting you, I'm begging you. I'm begging you when you get off this Zoom, if you're in a house with anyone else, give them a huge hug and a kiss and tell them that you love them and that you care about them and they mean the world to you. They mean the world to you. You can't live without them. Thank them. Express your gratitude to them. Don't just take it for granted. Don't just assume they'll be there forever. Don't just assume you'll be there forever. It's a huge bracha that we have. And that's what Hanukkah teaches. 7 nights for the extra oil. 1 night for the first oil. Oil lights. Oh my God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. I appreciate the fact that oil lights. There's light and there's warmth. What a bracha. Va'al nisecha. Every day, God does miracles with us. And so this time, the answer, I think, is so powerful that the whole premise of the question is simply gone. It's just not a question. The question assumes that that's not a miracle if oil burns for 1 night. No, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. It is a miracle. It's a huge miracle. And we should appreciate it and express our gratitude for what it is that we have. And not only modim anachnu, and not only modani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam, but to one another, interpersonal relationships. If you walk into a grocery, you say thank you to the person who helps you. You say thank you to the post person. You say thank you to your doorman if you live in an apartment building. I don't know what your situation is. Whatever it is, whoever you interact with, whoever enhances your life, thank you. I'm grateful. Gratitude is powerful. Gratitude is essential. Gratitude is a central part of the holiday of Hanukkah. So that's my answer. I've got about 10 others. I haven't really worked my way through all 500, but I'm going to stop now. And I'm going to share with you my answer. So you have 4 answers to the question of the Beit Yosef. I invite you. Tonight is Tuesday. So when you're lighting candles tomorrow night, or if you want to wait until after Hanukkah, until Friday night at the Shabbat table, kick it around. Ask the question and ask anybody if they have any suggestions. Anybody have any comments about this? Does this resonate with you? Grateful to Rabbi Reich. Love it. Love it. That's exactly the right attitude. Love it. Thank you. Well said, Paula and Michael. Thank you. Anybody else have any comment? Any thoughts, any comments? Does this resonate with you? Does this make sense to you? Anybody have any other answers maybe that you want to share to the question of Rabbi Caro? Why do we celebrate for 8 nights if, after all, there was enough to last for 1 night? Francis posed the question very beautifully. Anybody else? Anybody want to say something? Yeah, Dave and Claire Elman. I'm assuming you're Dave.
David. You're right.
Okay, I'm on the ball. Even though it's 11 o'clock at night, I'm doing fine here.
Well, you're not outside in the cold. Thank you very much. Very interesting, Joshua. I'm just intrigued that you made no comment about the success of the Maccabees and the miracle of beating up the Greeks.
Well, what the Maccabees were successful in being able to recapture the temple from the Yevanim, who up until that point had total control. The Maccabees did not give sovereignty in totality to the Jewish people, but they sure made a big difference and were able to replace the temple as a source of Jewish practice and Jewish ritual. Anybody else? Yeah.
Wasn't that a miracle too?
That was the miracle too. There you go. Okay, Dave, listen, David, when you write your book of analysis of the Jewish tradition, David's thoughts on the centrality of Jewish life, you're going to say, you have answer number 5. You know what answer number 5 is? The fact that the Maccabees were able to overcome the Greeks, that itself is a miracle. The fact that there was a battle. You know, in the Shmona Esrei and the Amida, we add a separate paragraph called Al Hanisim. It's about the miracle of Hanukkah. And what do we describe? Rabbim biad ma'atim tameim biad tahorim rishayim biad tzadikim. It's all about the military victory. The fact that we were able to win the war. You know what? 7 nights for the oil, 1 night for the war. Military victory. That itself is certainly warranting. Okay, David, put it in your book. Francis, you'll collaborate with Francis. She'll ask the question and you'll give answer number 5. Okay, we're doing great. We're doing great. 495 to go. Anybody else have any suggestion?
Rabbi, I have a suggestion.
Yes.
This is Todd.
Todd Salave.
My suggestion is that it's 7 nights for the miracle and 1 night so that you can ask 500 questions about it and be engaged in conversation about it.
Okay, fine. That's also a miracle. The miracle is that we should be intrigued by this and care about it enough to wonder why it's for 8 nights if it's really the miracle for 7 nights. It's the miracle of curiosity. It's the miracle of Jewish interest. It's the miracle that sustains us generation to generation. It's the miracle that says that Jewish tradition matters and that there's wisdom here. And if I'm going to ask the question, I know that there's going to be a good answer because that's what my tradition teaches me. And that itself is magnificent. That's the miracle of Jewish survival. Love it. Love it. Love it. Rabbi, when you see Todd, give him a lollipop. Give him a lollipop. And you give David a lollipop too, and also to Francis. Soon you're going to run out of lollipops. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? Jonathan Mowat, could you speak to us, please?
Sure. Turn that off.
And what would you like to say, Jonathan Mowat?
Another potential. Sorry.
Well, you're really a hush of a guy there.
Another potential reason could be, another potential explanation could be that given the destruction caused by the Greeks, the fact that any oil was located could be considered a
Absolutely.
miracle.
The fact that they even found it. The fact that they even found a cruise of oil is a miracle. It was only one teeny weeny little bit of an oil. It was the only one that everything was destroyed. You know, in a nanosecond, they could have just passed over it. It was a wreck. It was a destruction. Under some baidim somewhere, a beam or something, under plaster and mush and mess, they found this little thing. That's the fact that they found it is a miracle. Excellent. Excellent. You're doing great. Okay, one. Anybody else? One more. IGAN Partners. Please identify yourself.
My name is Michael Aaron. Thank you.
Michael, pleasure, privilege.
Your passion is remarkable. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to hear me all the way across the country.
It's my understanding that there's a halacha that in times of distraction, you could have lit the menorah with impure oil.
Yes.
That with all the trauma that they had gone through, that the people still were so passionate and so focused on honoring the tradition of pure oil.
Yes.
With the PTSD, that was important.
That's right. That's right. That's right. They could have used any oil. The halacha is, it's called tuma hutra b'tzibur, which means that when it comes to a communal matter, without getting into the specific details, the impurity becomes minimized. And so therefore you could do things that you normally might not be able to do. So you're 100% right. They could have used, I'm losing you, Michael. You left me. You went far away. I need you closer. Michael, for such a good answer, I need you closer. Thank you. But if you're sitting next to a significant other on the couch, then I want you to go to the couch. That's much more important. But if that's your Reish Shulchan, get out of here. Go. I'll talk. You'll hear me anyway. Go to your Reish Shulchan, give her a hug and tell her you love her and tell her how much you appreciate her, Michael. That's a good thing. It's very important. Okay, so you're right. Your answer it's a perfect answer because they really didn't need a pure cruse of oil. The fact that they insisted and kept on looking and looking and looking, that itself is amazing. It shows a level of commitment to try to do it right and to try to do it best and to try to do it well and not just to compromise. Magnificent, absolutely excellent, excellent. I saw somebody wrote before the fact that there was even a menorah left. Who wrote that? I'm going to go on the chat and find out. And I'm going to out you because you didn't say it out loud.
No, it's me. I'm Janet.
Janet. I don't see you, but that's okay. You're a Chanukah. I know you don't. It's okay. It's great. Janet, so let me at least hear your voice.
It's okay. I just...
There you are, Janet. What a pleasure to see you, Janet.
Thank you, Rabbi.
It's such a pleasure. Okay, so
listen to you.
So what is your answer? The fact that there was a menorah to be lit?
Yeah, I mean, they ransacked everything, right?
They ransacked everything. Who said that there would be a menorah left when they got there? Gorgeous. Rabbi Reich, I don't envy you. You have a very learned congregation. Your congregation here, one after another, you got to really be on your toes here with these great, wonderful people. Okay, so I want to leave you with this thought, and I leave all of us who spoke, leave one another with this thought. And you all gave wonderful answers. Please remember them all. And if you can, remember the one that I suggested as well, which is not even so much as an answer to the question, but a suggestion that the question doesn't even have any legs to stand on to begin with. Okay, Rabbi Reich, how would you like to proceed?
So first, I mean, I just from looking at everyone's screens, the expressions everyone's face is that this certainly resonated with everyone. And, you know, Baruch Hashem, we have this opportunity now with you, Rebbe, to be able to continue the conversation, taking it from the point of just focusing on Hanukkah to asking some broad questions. So some people submitted some questions to me earlier, you know, some contemporary issues that they'd like to hear your thoughts on. And in anticipation for this, as Rabbi Schacter mentioned before, I had called Rabbi Schacter to see if this was okay and that if there'd be time. And I asked him, you know, knowing that he was zooming in from New Jersey and it's already 11:15 over there. I asked him, you know, if this would be okay. He said, no, there's no time limit, however long we need. It didn't surprise me at all, but it's really amazing. So and if anyone has any other questions, feel free to send them to me privately in the chat. And if there really is time at the end, we'll be able to ask some more questions. But the first question that has really been asked by a number of different people goes like this: is the world today is becoming noticeably more divisive, whether it be social justice issues, proper practices in dealing with the pandemic, you know, masks, vaccinations, political affiliations, etc. The divide, the polarization is growing and deepening, and even for some can create a hostile interaction, even potentially at a Shabbos table. So what advice can you provide us as individuals and as a community, and how to navigate these important current dilemmas while, of course, maintaining shalom?
Hi. Okay.
Figure I'll start with that one.
Yeah. So let me tell you what I think. Obviously, this is a very, very important question because regretfully, the reality is that the divide in America is a very substantial one. And it was highlighted leading up to the election and even post-election. And there's a great deal of that in the context of, as you say, in the context of responding to COVID. COVID compliant, not COVID compliant, what does that mean? How does that express itself? And it's not just a disagreement, but there is a level of vituperative discourse that is very upsetting and very concerning. That it's not just that you have your opinion and I have my opinion, but that obviously you have no right to have that opinion because you're evil if you have that opinion, which is ratcheting up the level of animosity to a place where I have not ever seen this to this extent in my lifetime. I've seen disagreements, but to not allow someone else the humanity of a position and to discount someone's humanity based on a position that they take is something that I haven't seen in a long time or ever. And if I had a good answer, I would probably be very famous and very rich. But here's the way I see this, and I'm going to share with you what my perspective is, and then you'll take it for whatever it's worth. There's a famous Hasidic story about a Rabbi who said the following. And I want you to listen carefully because this is, to me, a very important, meaningful story. He said, when I was younger, I thought I could change the world. You know, I'm a young guy. I have a lot of energy. And then when I got older, I realized I'm not going to change the whole world. So I'm going to change the people in my city. And then when I got older, I realized that, that's like a tall order, change people in my city. So I'm going to change my members of my family. I'm going to try to have an impact on the members of my family. And then when I got older, I realized that I would be very lucky if I was able to have an impact on myself. And so for anybody to think that they're going to change the ethos of the discourse of contemporary American culture is hallucinating. Nobody's going to do that. The president-elect is trying to speak to that in some way. But, there's a Yiddish expression, I'll say it in Yiddish and I'll translate it, oder bedarf nicht, oder sehelft nicht, which means either it's not necessary to be said, or it doesn't matter if it's going to be said. Either way, it doesn't going to make a difference. Either it's not necessary because people agree, or it's not going to matter because people disagree and what you say isn't going to change anything. So here is what I suggest, and this may be disappointing to you. It's frankly disappointing to me, but this to me is the only realistic way how to begin to address this question. And that is for each one of us to speak with respect and care about someone else. It begins with each one of us. If each one of us will speak respectfully, and even if we disagree with someone, does not mean that we demonize them. Even if we strongly disagree with someone, it does not mean that we demonize them. If we speak respectfully, and our spouses and friends hear us speak respectfully, and our children and our parents hear us speak respectfully, then we can begin to ripple out and have at least an impact on the people closest to us. The way one makes a difference in the world is not by attacking the world, but it's step by step by step. It's one by one. If each one of us leaves tonight with a firm commitment to treat people respectfully, as hard as it may be, and it is, but human beings are endowed with the Tzelem Elokim, with the vision of God, or the role of God, or the face of God. They deserve respect. And that's how we can begin slowly to at least make a difference in the community. You are all part of a community. Mitzvah Hashem, someday, please God, I'm going to spend the Shabbos with you if the rabbi decides to invite me and if I'm able to travel. I'd love to spend Shabbos with you. You're a community the rabbi speaks very highly about. Such a wonderful, wonderful community that you are. Create this in your community. Your community has zero tolerance for disrespect. Zero tolerance, because everyone is committed to being respectful. And I want to share a midrash with you that is very resonant with me. The midrash says, Kedoshim Tihiyu. The pasuk says, the Bible says, the Torah says in Sefer Vayikra, you should be holy. Says the midrash, you might think that you're as holy as I am, says God. You should be holy. You might think you're as holy as me. So the midrash says, no. Ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokeichem kidushati l'ma'alami kidushatchem. I'm holier than you. That's what the midrash says. I'm going to repeat it because I want you to follow this. The Bible says, be holy. God says, you might think you're going to be as holy as me. So the rest of the verse says, no, I'm holier than you. There was a great rabbi lived in Jerusalem who was the head of a yeshiva called Yeshivat Mir, the Mir Yeshiva in Yerushalayim. His name was Reb Chaim Shmulevitz. I had the privilege when I was a teenager to study in Yeshivat Mir in Yerushalayim in 1967, 68, and 69 in Jerusalem. And he was the Rosh Yeshiva then. And he used to deliver Musar discourses. And he asked, what kind of question is that? God says, you might think you're as holy as me. And so therefore I need a verse to say, no, I'm holier than you. What's wrong with you? Are you crazy? You actually think that you might be as holy as God? In yeshiva terminology, this is called, what's the havamina? What's the initial assumption? The Bible says you are holy. Says God, wait a minute. You might think you're so holy, you're as holy as me. I need a verse to say, no, you're not as holy as me. What's wrong with you? You think you're as holy as me? How can you think you're as holy as me? What's wrong with you? You're a human being. Says Rabbi Shmulevitz, the reason why we ask such a question is because we don't know how great human beings could be. We don't really know the greatness of a human being. We don't know how great we could be. And so therefore, Chazal, the rabbis who did know how great a human being could be, were actually motivated to even entertain perhaps a possibility, and it still is very extreme, that we are so great that we need a verse to say we're not as great as God. So when I look at you, I see holy, great people. Great people. Not everybody is a professor, and not everybody has a PhD, and not everybody has rabbinic ordination. That is utterly irrelevant. Every Jew is holy, very special. So much so that I need an extra verse to say, I know you're special, but you're still not as special as God, but you're really special. Now, if I really believe that you're special, how can I demonize you? How can I put you down? How can I spit at you? How can I say you have no right to exist? How can I say you can't belong in my group? How can I say I can't sit next to you in shul? Actually, I can't even have you in my shul. I can't have you in my club. How can I say that? It's inconceivable. Because every Jew has tremendous humanity. And I'm going to go one step further. Every human being has humanity. Every human being. Every human being is B'Tselem Elokim. You walk in the street, you see someone. B'Tselem Elokim. You start, we start, I start in our own little circle. We're not going to change America. I hate to break it to you. I know La Jolla is a very important community, very, very centrally important community. You're not going to change America. You're not. No community is going to change America. Certainly no individual, no family, no community, no city is going to change America. So we have two options. One option is to say, that's it. It's too late. Sorry, forget about it. The other option is to say, so what can I do? I can't change America, but what can I do? And that's what I'm suggesting. We start at home. Your children should never hear you put down someone else. Never, never put down someone else for their beliefs. Yeah, you could put down somebody if they're a robber, if they're a gangster, if they're a murderer, chas v'shalom. That's unacceptable. But to put someone down for their beliefs, whether it's political, whether it's social, medical, you disagree. You say, I disagree with that. You say, I disagree strongly with that. You say, I think they're wrong. You say, I know they're wrong. But you don't undermine their very existence and their humanity. And that's where we start. And then it's a ripple. And then it happens to the whole community. The whole community begins to develop itself that way and to comport itself that way. And you become a model community, a community of derech eretz. And derech eretz, not just for the synagogue community and for the Jews in your community. You become a model for everyone with whom you interact. And you treat people respectfully. I said before, don't take anything for granted. Say thank you to the person who delivers you your mail. Say thank you to your manicurist. I don't know if you're going in to get a manicure. Say thank you to the person who bags your groceries if you're going to bag groceries. Say thank you. They're human beings. Say thank you to the person who opens the door for you. Say thank you to the nurse who takes your records when you come in to see the doctor. Say thank you. Appreciate the humanity in every person. Every person is close to God. And then I think we'll live more exalted lives. That's all. Remember that, Rabbi, you're not going to change the world, but you could change yourself. You could live an exalted life. You could change those around you. You can have an impact on those around you. So, Rabbi, that's what I think. That's what I think is the answer to this question, or at least my humble, incomplete, but I think most realistic answer to this question. Any reactions? Anybody agree, disagree? Anybody have a better answer? I'm all ears. Let me tell you, I'm all ears.
Well, Rabbi Schacter, I would just add, and I know that you'll appreciate this, that a story for another time, but it's a very good story. If anyone would like to hear it, I'm happy to share it. But I once literally bumped into Rabbi Yisrael Meir Lau, the previous Ashkenazic chief rabbi of Israel, a close friend of Rabbi Schacter. And I asked him, because I had this opportunity after literally bumping into him, I asked him, a young father, starting out my rabbinic career, what's the most important thing for me to work on? And he said exactly that point, noticing the Telem Elokim in every individual.
Yeah. And you know Rabbi Lau's story. You know Rabbi Lau's story? Do all of you? Does your community, Rabbi Reich, know? Here's a young man who was in the Buchenwald concentration camp, lost his parents, lost his grandparents, lost his uncles, lost his aunts. He only had one older brother. And as Rabbi Reich mentioned, I have a very close relationship with him because it was my late father who liberated him. My late father was the first American Army chaplain to enter into the concentration camps at the end of World War II. And he discovered Lulik, young Yisrael Meir, under a pile of corpses, and developed a warm relationship with him. He was 7 years old. My father was 27 years old. And they had a lifelong relationship, lifelong relationship. I don't know if any of you have were at the AIPAC conference this past March before the world shut down, but Rabbi Lau and I together were on the AIPAC stage. We opened the AIPAC conference, the two of us. I told my father's story, he told his story. It was extremely touching. So here's somebody who grew up with his parents, grandparents, uncles, and aunts murdered by cruel Nazis. And he's the one who told Rabbi Reich, see the Tzelem Elokim in every human being. It's actually awe-inspiring. I would give him a pass if he would say, see the Tzelem Elokim in the Jews. You know what? That itself is good.
He made a point of saying exactly like you said.
Made a point of saying, not just the Jews. That is just amazing.
He made a point of saying that.
And if he could say, yes, and if he could say it, we should all say it. We should all say it. And if you see the Tzelem Elokim, both in Jews and in non-Jews, then it's inconceivable to be so utterly disparaging and disrespectful. It's just inconceivable. And I think that's a good way how to live our lives. We would be less angry, we would be happier, we would be more embracing, we would be calmer, and we would exist on a much higher level. And isn't that, after all, what it is that we want to do? We want to live decent moral lives, Jewish lives and human lives. We are part of the Jewish people, we're part of the human race. And both of those are parts of us, and both of those are important. And here they coincide around a common value. Anybody else? Any comments? Okay, one more question, Rabbi Reich.
Okay, so on the theme of being appreciative of the people in our lives, the people around you and the people that have impacted you. So this year, aside from the many challenges that have been brought upon us by the pandemic, so Klal Yisrael has suffered the tremendous loss of foundational Gedolim, Rabbi Sachs, Rabbi Feinstein, Rabbi Lamb, of course. Now, each one obviously deserves their own reflections and their own perspective to properly appreciate the magnitude of the losses, and each one certainly has impacted our lives directly. I mean, I don't think there's a single Jew, especially English-speaking Jew on the planet, that has not been directly impacted by any of them. But due to time, if we could just pick one, maybe Rabbi Sachs, who maybe had the most direct impact to our lives and the individuals in our community. If you, Rabbi Schacter, could provide any perspective on this, this mega loss that Klal Yisrael has experienced through the passing of Rabbi Sachs.
Yeah. I first want to say that we're going over an hour. If anybody needs to duck out, I don't want you to feel that you're locked in. I'm pushing midnight, but I'm here with you. So, but you don't need to be here. I'm happy to be here. So I give you reshus. If you have something pressing, please feel free. Yeah, I must tell you that it's about 5 weeks since the passing of Jonathan Sachs, and I'm still in shock. I knew that he was ill. I did not know how ill he was. I first met Rabbi Jonathan Sachs about 35 years ago when I was a rabbi on the Upper West Side of Manhattan in a synagogue called the Jewish Center. My sweetest, kindest, warmest, and most beloved friends, Sam and Debbie Moed. Sam grew up in the shul, and Sam's parents, Zol Gesundsein, extraordinarily important and prominent members of the congregation. One of the blessings of my career at the Jewish Center was to develop a relationship with the Moed family. And Debbie joined us a little bit in. I remember standing under their chuppah. I was Masader Kedushin for them. Very special. This was a very special shul. In 1985, I invited Jonathan Sachs to be the guest speaker for a Shabbos at the Jewish Center. And he came, he spent Shabbos with us, and he, we fell in love with one another. He was in my home in New York, and then I moved to Brookline, Massachusetts. He came for a Shabbos. I now live in Teaneck, New Jersey. He came for a Shabbos with his wife, Lady Elaine. I was in their home in St. John's Wood in London. I wouldn't say we were friends. We didn't really talk on a regular basis, but we were friends, certainly connected to one another. We shared the podium many, many times. And I did not know how ill he was, and I'm overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed with sadness. I did give a talk, a memorial talk for Rabbi Sachs to a community in Detroit, a couple of communities in Detroit, maybe 3 weeks ago. And if any of you are used to poking around yutorah.org, you put in my name, Rabbi Sachs's name in yutorah.org, you'll get the full appreciation. But I just want to choose now for a few moments a couple of thoughts. Now here again, you and I are not going to be Rabbi Sachs. You and I are not going to be buddy-buddy with Prince Charles. You and I are not going to teach Bible in Buckingham Palace. You and I are not going to deliver lectures in the House of Lords. You and I are not going to write regularly in the Times of London or in the Daily Mail or in the Evening Standard. You and I are not going to speak to the European Parliament. You and I are not going to go to the Vatican. So yeah, he was a great man, but what does that have to do with me? It's really sad. I read his stuff, but what does that have to do with me? And what I have been thinking about is, what is there about Rabbi Jonathan Sachs's life that is relevant to me and to you? But we're not going to do these things. You know, we're Pashat Eden. We're simple Jews. We're nice Jews. You know, we're trying to get by and do what we can. We're not so famous. So why is that relevant to me? Yeah, I feel bad. Well, why is that relevant to me? And I want to choose one or two aspects of his life that I think are very much relevant to us. Number one, Rabbi Sachs was what I'm going to call a mavakesh. A mavakesh means a seeker. You know, there are people who are just satisfied where they are. Here's where I am. Here's what I am. Maybe someday I'll read a book. Maybe someday I'll open up a Gemara. Maybe someday I'll go to the rabbi's class. You know what, Rabbi? It is what it is. I am what I am. You know, it's okay. That's it. That's what I am. And then there are people, and I would suspect many in your congregation, many of you, who are seekers, which means no, it's not that because I am is what I am. Because I am is I'm on a journey. And here's where I am now. But I wanna grow a little bit more. I wanna learn more. I actually wanna learn about symphonies, and I wanna learn about literature, and I wanna learn about Talmud. I wanna expand my horizons. I wanna learn about psychology. I wanna be more sensitive. Maybe I even wanna go to therapy and dig into my psyche. I'm actually not happy with where I am. I'm happy where I am for now. And I wanna seek. I wanna be a seeker. Jonathan Sachs was a seeker. Do you know that he was born and raised in a non-observant family? In a family, certainly it was a traditional family, but it wasn't a very observant family, and it certainly wasn't a Torah intellectual family. His parents were simple Pashat Yidden, wonderful Jews. And they have this genius son, and he goes off to Cambridge University, and he wants to be a professor of philosophy. And he devotes his time to philosophy. And then one day he wakes up and he says, something is missing. He's 20 or 21 years old, matriculating in philosophy at Cambridge University. And that's his life's aspiration, to be a philosopher. And he says something is missing. And he comes to the United States and he visits two people. He came to the United States to see two people. One was the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and one was Dr. Norman Lamb, the president of Yeshiva University, who was then, even before he was the president of Yeshiva University, he was a prominent rabbi. He was actually a rabbi in the Jewish Center and the synagogue that I was in later afterwards. Jonathan Sacks says, I'm missing something. I want to meet these two rabbis. And that changed his life. He told me the story. He comes into Lubavitcher Rebbe and he says to Lubavitcher Rebbe, they're talking about philosophy and science. And then the Rebbe says, tell me about you. What are you doing? Well, I'm finding myself in Cambridge University. The Rebbe says, nobody finds themselves anywhere. People put themselves places. You don't find yourself anywhere. You put yourself there. Why did you put yourself there? This is a conscious decision. Tell me about Jewish life in Cambridge. I really don't know too much about Jewish life in Cambridge. What do you mean you don't know about Jewish life in Cambridge? You're a Jew, you have an obligation to be engaged with Judaism. And all of a sudden, there used to be an expression in English, the dime dropped. I am showing you how old I am that I even know that expression, right? The Junge Chevra don't even know what that means anymore. You know, in Israel, now I'm really dating myself. Those of you who may remember public telephones, that you needed a special coin to get in, to shtip in, and you needed to put it in every 12 seconds. That was called an asimon. Nafal ha'asimon is the same expression in Hebrew as the dime drop. All of a sudden, the dime drops in Jonathan Sacks's head and says, you know what? I really ought to look into this Jewish thing. And he goes back to Cambridge and he studies, but he gets involved in the Jewish community and he starts to learn. He hadn't cracked the Gemara till he's 20 something. Judaism was not relevant to his life in any significant way, certainly not professionally, not even in any significant way. And he changed because he was searching. He was a mavakech, he was a searcher. He said about the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he said that leaders have followers. Leaders create followers. Great leaders create other leaders. I'm going to say it again. Leaders create followers. Great leaders create other leaders. He was created by the Lubavitcher Rebbe and by his very transformative conversation with Dr. Lamb, goes back to England, changes his life. And he enrolls in Jews College in London and he starts to learn Gemara with the late Rabbi Nachum Rabinovich, who for the last 30 years was Rosh Yeshiva in Ma'aleh Adumim in Israel. And he turns into Jonathan Sacks because he's curious, because he's a mavakesh, because he's not happy with where he is. Do you know that in the last 25 years, he wrote one book a year? He wrote one book a year. I would go to England to visit. I was once invited to go speak in a shul in London, and I call up his secretary, and I say, Joanna, it's J.J. Schacter. She knew already who I was. And I said, I'd like to see Jonathan Sacks. He said, he's too busy. He's busy. He's not seeing anybody for a month. He's writing a book. He's writing a book for a month. I say, Joanna, it's JJ. I'm his friend. Sorry, he's not seeing anybody. I once took a group of students to England and I wanted to see him. He should talk to my student. He's writing a book. He's writing a book. You know why you write a book? You write a book because you're looking for an answer. You're writing a book because you're looking for something. You're writing a book so you could read the book. That's why you write the book, because you're working something out. because it's not done yet. You got to put it on paper. You got to think it through. You're a mavakesh, you're a seeker. When he would come into my house, the first thing he would do is make a beeline to the bookcases. Is there a book here I haven't seen yet? And he would lose himself in the library in my house. Books, pulling books. You had to pull them out to go to shul. You had to pull them out to eat. He was a mavakesh. You and I are not going to write one book a year. When it may be you, I'm not writing one book a year. But we could learn from him to be a seeker, to be a mavakesh, to be a seeker. I'll tell you something else, one more thing. Is that okay? One more thing, Rabbi Reich? One more thing. There are a lot that I could say. You'll listen if you want to.
We'd have 10 more things.
Yeah, 10 more things. If you really want the whole caboodle, you'll listen to my talk. Some of you may be familiar with Jewish Action. It's a magazine that comes out from the Orthodox Union. This coming issue has a little section devoted to Rabbi Sachs, and I'm the lead article that I summarize some of what it is that I'm telling you now. So you could read it also. I learned something really important from Rabbi Sachs, and that is that the world around us really matters. The world around us matters. You see, I grew up in a very traditional Orthodox home. It was a modern Orthodox home. My father was a modern Orthodox rabbi. I mentioned to you already that he was a chaplain in the American Army, the first chaplain to go into the concentration camps. He was a very prominent modern Orthodox American rabbi, but it was a very traditional home. And I mentioned to you that I learned in the Mir Yeshiva in Yerushalayim. The rabbi mentioned that my smicha is from a Sifta Torah V'das. I grew up in a very traditional home, and in the traditional yeshiva world in particular, there was a great emphasis, and I understand it, and a legitimate and valid emphasis on the Jewish world and making the Jewish world better and caring about the Jewish world and caring about educating the Jewish world and elevating the Jewish world and inspiring the Jewish world. And of course that's important. But Jonathan Sachs taught us that in addition to that, we have an obligation to make an impact on the non-Jewish world, on the non-Jewish world. He told me that shortly after he became the chief rabbi of England, he realized that basically England doesn't need a chief rabbi. They don't read, how many countries in the world have chief rabbis? How many countries have chief? What, America has a chief rabbi? I don't know. How many countries have chief rabbis? They don't really need a chief rabbi. They're shuls. The shuls have their own rabbis. So the rabbis take care of their shuls. And then there's a London Beit Din, the London Beit Din, internationally renowned London Beit Din that paskins and adjudicates all complicated issues. So he decided that he was going to be not the chief rabbi for the Jews, but he's going to become the chief rabbi for the Goyim. He's going to be the chief rabbi for the non-Jews. And it was a conscious decision, and something goes off in his head, and he devoted an enormous amount of energy to speak the words of morality and decency to a world where that was in very short supply. He spoke to the world. He spoke to kings and queens and parliaments in the House of Lords. You got to Google, what a bracha. We live at a time where he left us, and I can't do it because it's too painful for me to hear his voice. I cannot see any of them. But you go Google the House of Lords, the way he speaks, Google the way he debates atheists. He was a genius. There's no one who was able to speak to the world as he was, and he taught us. Of course, you have to care about the Jewish community, but you can't turn your back on the world. You care about the world matters. Now, how are you and I going to do that? We're not debating atheists, and we're not speaking in the House of Lords. But we too need to be what is known in Jewish tradition as an or lagoyim. We need to be a light unto the nations. We need to behave morally and ethically. We need to say thank you to the person who bags our groceries. We need to be walking repositories of human decency so that people should look at us and say, wow, that's a nice person. That's the way we could convey the message of the core of Judaism, which is be a mensch, to convey that to the world. And that brings me back to the first question. Be a mensch, model being a mensch, because the world matters. We would be foolish if we didn't care about what's going on around us. We need the world around us to be supportive of us, especially in growing anti-Semitism. Not very far from you, not very far from me, attacks. We need the world to be supportive of the state of Israel. We can't stick our necks in the ground and make believe that doesn't matter. The hell with them, who cares about them? It's irrelevant to me. I just need to make sure I have a nice minyan where I could daven it. Of course we have to have a minyan where we could daven it. Of course. But we can't turn our backs on the world. The world matters. And how do you make a difference? The same way, one by one by one. That has to be on our agenda. Our agenda is not only to be a mensch, not only to be ben adam lamakom and ben adam lachavero, to treat one another and to treat God and to care about Judaism and to be authentic and sensitive and sincere, but we need to have a conscious strategic plan to go out on Thanksgiving to the firehouse and thank the firemen for protecting us, to go on Christmas Eve to a homeless shelter and to go help the homeless. We need to do something. That is crucially, centrally important. We need to be Baalei Chesed. We need to be Baalei Chesed, not just for one another, but we need to model for the world the values of Judaism. The world matters. It's short-sighted to think that the world doesn't matter. The world matters big time, big time. There's a lot more that I could say, but I think I've outlived my welcome. I thank you so much, Rabbi, for inviting me. Thank you, Mrs. Reich. It's very nice to see you as well. Nice to see you. You are a great gift to this community and very much appreciated. And we thank you very much for all that you do. Come on, more of you can clap. That's okay. It's a good thing. Thank you. That's the right thing to do. Thank you for the Rabbi and the Rebbitzin. Thank you so much for having me. I wish you well. Mitzvah Hashem, someday we should see one another, and stay safe and be healthy and be grateful. I wish you all a happy Hanukkah and have a good night.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much. Again, I just want to thank our sponsors, the Aarons, the Keatings, the Shores, and the Horns. Thank you so much for everyone to come. For us to get together like this on Hanukkah and learn Torah together has just been spectacular. Thank you, Rabbi Schacter. Hopefully this evening was really just a taster for the full Shabbaton that Rabbi Schacter was mentioning. We can invite
Halavai, please go.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wish you well. I wish you well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Be well.
Beautiful.
Happy Hanukkah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
Happy
you, Rabbi.
Hanukkah. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I wish you well.
Thank you in regards to the man who bags your groceries in Teaneck.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's actually a woman, but that's okay. I'll give her your warmest regards from sweet Jews on the West Coast.
Rabbi Schacter, thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Reif, for putting this together.
Thank you.
I wish you well.
Thank you.
You got a great community. You should continue to have good health and nachas.
The same to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
We need more people like you, thinking like you and acting like you. Then we would have a different world. Many more
And you're going to help make it that way, Chana. You're going to help make it that way.
Chana already does.
I could see how you're a special person. I see in your eyes how you're such a special person.
Thank you.
And your community is blessed to have you, and you should have gesund. You should have good health for years and years to come. You should have good health and be strong.
Amen.
Amen.
We wish you well.
Amen.
You're a special treasure.
That she is.
Okay, Rabbi, I think I'm heading out. Is that okay?
It's already, for us, it's still the 6th night of Hanukkah. It's almost the 6th day of Hanukkah for you, Rabbi.
Yeah. Okay. So on that note, I'm going to leave you and thank you and look forward to being in touch. And I hope our paths will cross soon. Okay.
Absolutely.
Freilich and Chanukah. I wish you all the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.